Hey YouTube, today we're going to try and repair this speaker here. This is a Klipsch ProMedia 2.1 surround sound speaker, and I believe it's version 2.1. And I picked this up broken on Craigslist, and the problem ends up being, so you've got the control pod here in this wire. If you look in here, you can see it's broken off. And back here on the back of the sub is the remainder of the plug. So apparently the previous owner stepped on it, kicked on the wire, something like that, and pulled it out. And oddly enough, this apparently is a really common failure. You search on the internet and you find a lot of people with a similar problem to this. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to solder on a new connector on here. I'm also going to have to check this on the circuit board here, make sure there's no broken traces. And we'll go ahead and take the whole thing apart and see if there's any caps that need to be replaced or any other problems. So yeah, I guess step one is let's go ahead and pull this out. And so this here, that's what the connector looks like. So we need to get a new connector like that and solder it all up. And this is what the inside of the pod looks like. It's just a small little circuit board. They went through and snotted up every capacitor on here. But the board itself, I don't see any problems on the board, and I used the ESR meter and checked all the caps, and everything checks out on this board. So unless these potentiometers are dirty, I think this board is good to go. I've gone ahead and taken the back panel off the subwoofer here and had a look inside, and first thing I noticed, just like the pod, every single capacitor, resistor, just about everything is gunked down with compound, which at first seemed overkill, but now that I think about it, it is a speaker, there's a lot of vibration, so all of that compound to hold things in place kind of makes sense. Every capacitor looks good, tests fine. I don't see any problems in here. Here where this plug comes over, the solder joints here, they look fine. I don't see any problems. I'll still probably touch them up with a little bit of fresh solder, but I don't see any cracked solder joints. So I think really just replace that plug and this subwoofer should work fine. So the repair on this subwoofer took a couple of twists and turns that was unexpected. To repair the plug in the back, my first thought was to use this, which is basically, it's a tiny little plug that you can solder wires onto the back and you can just assemble it together, and it's basically a replacement for the plug that's on there. And the problem I was running into is these wires are very small back here to solder onto, and I was actually melting the housing and the pins were getting deformed. So very quickly I realized that this is just too small. I was having no luck soldering that. So my next thought was that connector's the same size as a PS2 connector. So I thought cut the end of an old keyboard and then solder the wires together here, which is a lot easier to solder two wires together than to try and go to this tiny little pin. The problem I've ran into there, so there are 6 wires down in there plus the outer ground sleeve. Yet when I cut the keyboard wire open, there are 4 or was it 5 wires in there. So there's a number of wires missing, so this cable just physically won't work. So what I ended up doing, it's kind of hesitant to do it, but I drilled a hole in the case here, ran the wire through, and then literally direct soldered everything onto the circuit board there. And there's not a lot of light, hard to see, but just did that. And then right here I put a zip tie on there really tight, and that kind of acts as a cable restraint, so if you tug on it, it's not going to pull on the wires on the circuit board. It tugs right there. So let's go ahead, and we've got it all hooked up here. Let's turn it on and see what happens. Turn on the wire. Oh, I heard a relay click and we've got lights here. So let's go ahead and hook the speakers up and an audio source and see what we get. And when you get it all hooked up, this is what it sounds like. Sounds pretty good. Bass controls on the sub work. Volume. Well, there you go, a repaired Klipsch subwoofer and satellite speakers. Ended up costing nothing because I just soldered directly to the circuit board. So, thanks for watching.